my work is partially training and partially coaching, if you will, right? So one of the things we're trying to do is train the nervous system, become aware first of how the nervous system affects us. And so I talk about the autonomic nervous system, which is just the stress response and the relaxation response. And most people are caught in a stress response. I call that the off response. Fight or flight, I just move the letters around, make it off. And the reason why I call it off is because our bodies then take control and...
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Career Coaches US podcast. I'm your host Rexhen, and today's guest is Jeremy Rothenberg, an executive coach, nervous system strategist, and clarity architect who helps high performers regulate, rewire, and realign with what truly matters. With a unique blend of somatic medicine, neuroscience, and lived experience overcoming chronic illness, Jeremy guides leaders, founders, and creatives out of burnout and survival mode into calm, clarity, and sustainable performance. His coaching goes beyond mindset. It helps clients train their nervous system for real resilience, strategic decision-making, and deeper purpose. And it's a pleasure for me to have him on the podcast today. Welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming, Jeremy. So I wanted to ask you, when it comes to your beginnings and how you started your own coaching business, first of all, what inspired you to become a coach and then do this as a business?
Well, it was a long process, but I'll give you something very simple, which is that I was a successful product manager in tech many years ago, and I felt like I was dying inside. And truth is, I was, but I didn't realize it till 30 years later, when I was diagnosed with a heart condition, liver and heart condition. But during that time, because I felt that way, I left the world of product management and became an acupuncturist. I studied Chinese medicine. And through that process of working with patients in the clinic, I realized that it was better and more fulfilling for both of us if I was able to coach people to living a better, more healthy, more vibrant life than just treating them. And so I became a coach. So I naturally became a coach out of that process. And it was only a couple of years ago where I actually had to have heart surgery to take off the pericardium of my heart, which was constricting my heart and killing my liver. And this is a metaphor, but it's also a lived reality where my heart was actually being restricted and constricted. And it not only caused physical problems, but I wasn't able to fully express who I was in the world, be authentic and find joy. And so what I do now is, and really what my mission is to help other people find that before it's too late.
Well, first of all, it's great that it all went well with surgery and everything. I hope you're feeling better overall.
I feel great. Yeah, 6 months after the surgery, which was a year and a half ago, I ran a half marathon up a mile up a mountain. Yeah.
Nice. That's great. So this is so interesting. So when going through your coaching journey with your clients and knowing also what you've been through, your lived experience, when working with them, what about it do you find the most rewarding?
Well, when people wake up to who and what they really are and what they really want, and not just what they were conditioned and programmed to want, that to me is very fulfilling. And when that turns into physical, mental, emotional changes in the body. So people get over chronic, weird symptoms. People become happier, more energy, and sometimes choose different directions in their lives, or they get even deeper and more engaged in what they're currently doing.
And we also mentioned this in the intro a little bit, that you are working with leaders, founders, creatives. Mm-hmm. But for that part of the audience that is listening, how would you specifically describe the ideal client profile? Is there a certain industry? Is there a certain demographic that you typically find yourself working with? What are some
I think of it as like I work with creative souls trapped in corporate bodies, right? So that kind of captures a lot. But a lot of my clients are from the tech industry because that's where I was from. But it's basically people who have a yearning for some sort of expression in their lives, and yet they are doing jobs that feel restrictive.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes that just leads to people not being happy in their work, or getting overwhelmed or getting anxious and having that kind of problems, not sleeping, all of that kind of stuff. But a lot of times it leads to symptoms, chronic symptoms and physical symptoms. That's where my Chinese medicine background comes in. So I'd say most of my clients are, 20 to 50. It's really 25 probably to 50. You start to realize this stuff a little later, generally speaking, in a corporate type, startup type job.
Interesting. And so for them to understand, how do we help them, or how is it like to work with you? Is there a certain program of a certain length? How is the engagement like?
Yeah, so my work is partially training and partially coaching, if you will, right? So one of the things we're trying to do is train the nervous system, to become aware first of how the nervous system affects us. And so I talk about the autonomic nervous system, which is just the stress response and the relaxation response. And most people are caught in a stress response. I call that the off response. Fight or flight, I just move the letters around, make it off. And the reason why I call it off is because our bodies then take control, and we use pre-programmed patterns to solve problems, to get back to a safe place. And so most people are operating in the off response all the time, and they're not really connected to who and what they are, what I call their spark. And so what we do is we train them to get into the rest and digest, which I call the rad response. So we want to move people from being off to being rad, right? And that is training. The way we do it is, maybe it's a meditation practice. Maybe it's a change in diet. Maybe it's a use of what's called hormesis, like cold exposure, small bits of stress to get the system to respond, so that we can start getting more resilience into the stress response. Why? So that when you are under stress, you don't go off. You're actually still capable of making clear decisions and strategic decisions that aren't just based on programming. So this also helps with communication and relationships and all of that kind of stuff. And then eventually we want to get to the on state, which is a place where both parts of the nervous system are active, where we're operating out of excitement, love, and joy, which is kind of the flow state. And this all requires a bit of training, practice, habit forming. And then we do the coaching is in taking real world problems and breaking them down. What's happening inside your mind? What's happening inside your body? How are you responding to this? Mm-hmm. So I'd say that's the way it works. There's a training component, there's a coaching component, and then I guess there's a third component, which is if there is medical intervention, from my point of view, which is herbal medical therapy. Local clients will get acupuncture to help actually shift things in the body when and if they need to be shifted.
Interesting. And so is it all one-on-one coaching, or is there also group coaching in it?
Currently, it's all one-on-one. I've done some groups in the past, but I haven't been doing them lately. So it's all one.
And how long would you say it typically takes for a person to go through it and see meaningful change? Because I can imagine it does take a while. So typically, how would you say, how long is the engagement, you'd say?
I'd say almost all initial engagements are about 3 months, start at 3 months. I work with people on a monthly basis, but generally it takes about 3 months to get a pretty good transformation, a foothold. And then it really takes time after that, because these new habits that we engage in the body, we're trying to get habits from our conscious mind to our unconscious mind, so that our nervous system is performing our habits automatically, as opposed to we have to make conscious choices. That takes a while. Some people think that takes, 30 days. I'd say it probably takes 6 months.
Interesting. So it does take a while until you actually just naturally do things without having to force your conscious mind into thinking about doing these things.
Exactly. Because the way that we're all operating every day is that way. We're constantly doing things without thinking about them. We think we're thinking about them, but if you notice what you do every day, the vast majority of it is habit. The vast majority of it is just what happens next, right? So a simple example is I help people create a morning practice, and that could be a meditation practice, a creative practice, some kind of connection with themselves in the morning. And this just looks something very simply like wake up, do your little thing, whether you go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, and then you go to do this thing, whatever it is, meditate, do some yoga, go for a run, whatever it is. That should happen automatically. Like you shouldn't have to think about that. Like, what am I going to do right now? So this just all just flows naturally. And if you don't do it, after a while, you don't do it, you feel like your day doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel right. And that's what I'm after, is helping people change their habits to change how they perceive their reality.
Thank you. Thanks so much for sharing that. And for all the coaches listening, when it comes to you finding your clients, what marketing channel is working really well for you right now? Is there a certain marketing strategy or marketing channel that works very well?
Well, the best marketing channel is referrals. I do a lot of LinkedIn outreach that works reasonably well. But I'd say the best thing for me has always been working with warm leads. So I work with referrals, people who forward my emails, people who read my Substack now that I've created a Substack called The Joyful Rebellion, people who are familiar with that. So I found over the years that cold outreach works pretty poorly, and that the warmer the outreach, the better the results.
So yeah, it's actually been the case with most coaches that I've had on the podcast as well, that referrals is kind of like the main one, especially for coaches who have been doing this for a while. For example, in yourself, just looking at the LinkedIn, is about more than 15 years, almost 16 years, right? So that referral network kind of grows over time to a point that
Absolutely.
it's not always predictable, but it is something that has worked well for many coaches. And you also mentioned Substack. So is that all content on Substack?
Substack right now is just, yeah, it's all content. It's a little bit of a departure from my traditional just writing about coaching or writing, about how to build good habits, all that kind of stuff. This is more articulating a system, the way I see the mind, the way I see how the mind interacts with the body. And it has a little fun to it. It has some mythic characters, and it's an experiment for me, and it's fun. It's getting a lot of followers, and I'm hoping to turn it into a book, something to pass to my clients so that they can understand things more deeply while they're working with me or without working with me, and hopefully to pass it down to my daughter so that she really understands what it is that I do.
Cool. Because I was just gonna ask you actually for the goals that you have for the next 1 to 3 years. How would you break that down specifically?
Well, honestly, my goals for the next 1 to 3 years is to build a little bit of a movement around this joyful rebellion, because I fear that we're in a time of drastic change politically in our world, where there's authoritarianism coming down pretty hard on us. And so what I want to awaken in people is how we have an inner authoritarian, which I call the monarch, and how our inner conditioning and subjectivity is allowing for what's happening outside of us. And that part of my coaching practice now has to be waking people up to what's going on inside of them so that they can help make an impression on the world outside of them. So for the next 1 to 3 years, of course, it's a little bit about growing my personal practice, but it's not about really a business outlook. It's more about getting people involved in a bit of a movement so that we can protect ourselves, save ourselves, and live from a more joyful place rather than one of fear and repression.
That isn't, and how are you thinking of going about it? Since it seems like a big goal. So I was thinking, like, is it for the next 1 to 3 years, or is it like a bigger amount of time? How are you thinking about it?
Well, I mean, I generally shy away from political talk, but the next 1 to 3 years is really during a term of our current president, and so there has to be a movement afoot. And so I think I want to play my part by simply waking people up to that, and not to being politically active so much out there, but reconstructing what's going on in here so that we can not feel that we just need to put our heads down and get back to our jobs, but that we need to work on building a new world because something's being taken away.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I was thinking also, throughout your experience of like almost 16 years, when it comes to investments, and this goes back to the research that I mentioned earlier, what have been some good investments that you've made over time that you feel good about? Either you learned a lot or you feel like there was a good return on that investment. And what have been some investments that you don't feel so good about, or you feel like you could have avoided potentially?
Yeah, I mean, I have a big sigh around that because, and I guess that a lot of your coaching practitioner listeners probably have a similar experience, which is that there's lots of big ticket items out there to help you grow your practice. And the vast majority of them have great ideas in them, and they all kind of echo each other in best practices, but none of them can deliver results for you. Right. So you actually have to find your version of that information. You know, I'd say 20% of the money I've spent on programs like that has been valuable. And a good, probably 80% of it should have been spent hiring others to help me do more work myself, to actually implement things rather than buy into a larger system of somebody else's that works for a different type of practice. I think this is a very common experience that we don't have enough people talking about, that there's a lot of people who, I'll just say it this way, who prey upon coaches who want to have a big, solid business that makes a lot of money. We all do. I'd say, I think that most people, the vast majority of the people in those programs don't succeed. And there's a lot of money spent that could be used, better invested.
Absolutely. And what would be, in this case, a good investment?
Well, I think we need to learn these basic best practices, right? And everybody's teaching the same stuff, like thinking about who you're, basic marketing 101, which most coaches don't have. Who's your target? How are you reaching them? All that kind of stuff, infrastructure around that. So I think the best investment would be to hire either virtual assistants or actual assistants, or people with actual business marketing experience to do that work, to take their expertise and to help your business, rather than putting that money into a program where you think you're going to do it yourself because they tell you that you're going to be able to do it yourself, and then you realize that you can't do it yourself. You're paying them, and then you still need to hire people. Make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, definitely hiring is not like when thinking about scale is not something that you can skip. Or I feel like hiring is very, very important. There's no way you can grow only with you. Even when you think about it, even if you were to do all group coaching, you still will run the limit of your capacity at some point. So it makes a lot of sense.
Well, it's a very simple way I think about it. So I still have an acupuncture practice, but for probably 10 out of the 15 years you're describing was mostly an acupuncture practice. And the coaching grew and grew and grew. So now I still have a small acupuncture practice and a coaching practice. What I realized very clearly is you're trying to do too many things at once. Like if you're running a business that is a service business and you're also the service provider, you have a problem. Right? You can't do both of those things. They're two very different sets of skills, and they both require full time. And so I've been struggling with that the whole time, to be quite honest about it. But the more I get help from the outside doing some of the tasks that I would normally do, the better. So like you said, hiring, if you want to scale, if you want to put more out into the world, definitely requires other hands, other brains.
Absolutely.
AI is helping, but it's not actual people.
Yeah, and so AI is pretty interesting because recently it's like coming up with AI agents which are also doing tasks. It's not yet there. It's not like people. It's just removing some of the work that is very repeatable in your business and trying to find these spots to free up your time. But it makes a lot of sense when you said that if you're a service business and you are doing the service yourself, you are basically limiting yourself because you either like, and this is for all coaches, is been an issue. They're both working in their business and on their business,
Right,
which
exactly.
are two different things. And sometimes they don't have that much time to work on the business. So most of the time is in the business actually doing coaching, which is what they mostly love doing. For the most part that I've seen, most people don't like to do marketing and sales, and that is that part of business there. Having assistants, VAs, trying to delegate some of that work would be very, very helpful.
Right. Yeah, my experience over the years has been, do a bunch of marketing, do some interesting things, get some people in the door, and then you're very busy and you can't do that work until you get less busy, and then you're behind the 8 ball, and you need to do that work again and get that. So you need it all happening at the same time.
Or like the other way is, since you're only doing one-on-one coaching, the other thing, the other way you can think about it is you got to have other coaches potentially doing the coaching for you, and you are the face, but you're not actually doing the coaching. Some coaches find that difficult because maybe clients do expect you to be the person who is coaching, but it's not been the case for the coaches who I've seen scale. There's ways where you are basically the figure. It doesn't mean that you're always the person who's coaching. You might do some coaching, but you might be, for example, on the very, very high ticket where some clients might have access to you, but the rest of them go to a team that you've trained very well on, still being able to deliver great results for your clients. So yeah, it's that there.
That's the next level for me. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that.
Cool. And so when it comes to,
well, the main piece of advice I want to give to everybody is not to go to the grave without doing what you want to do in this life. So I was given the opportunity through having major heart surgery, and basically, if I didn't have that, probably dying, a second chance to recognize that we tend to dull and doubt what is speaking deep inside of us to what we actually want to do. And if we do what we actually want to do, there's tons of energy. There feels like there's more time, and there feels like it's much more fulfilling. So I would caution other coaches to not just try to fit into a mold that doesn't work for them, doesn't feel right for them, because it won't work.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeremy. And thank you so much for coming into the podcast today. It was great to have you on the show. And for anyone who wants to connect with you or find you, they can go on to LinkedIn, Jeremy
Rothenberg. Or you can go to the Joyful Rebellion at Substack.
Okay, cool. Is there also a website?
Yeah, jeremyrothenberg.com.
Cool. So we'll put that on the description as well. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeremy. And thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.